Thank you, Chairman and legislators. It's interesting. It seems like yesterday I sat in that seat from 1992 to 1996, and it is always a pleasure to be here. This is the 18th time I've had the honor and privilege to come before your body, have permission of the floor to present the State of the Fisc. The State of the Fisc is essentially our report back to you on the financial conditions of the county and what transpired during 2012 or the previous year. Under the charter, they call for a report from our office. We like to get you as close to an audited group of numbers as possible, so we don't give you anything until we've turned in the annual financial report to the Office of the State Comptroller. We did so April the 30th, and the report that we give you tonight is a result of that. Normally what I'll do is I'll go right into the thing I love. I go right into the numbers and the results, and I bore every one of you and put you to sleep. Tonight I'm going to do something different. I'm going to talk about the hottest issue that we have in front of us at this time, the nursing home. I'll then talk about the results. The results charts will go through very quickly, and then I'll talk about just one remedy. As some of you have been bored before, I love to throw 20 remedies or 15 or 6. I'm only going to talk about one proposed remedy for 2013 for you to consider, and we actually have funding for most of it. As we go through the charts on the State of the Fisc, the first chart you have, and if you can't see it, I apologize. This will be on our website tomorrow. You'll be able to see it. This gives you a trend on what's going on at the nursing home. And if you look on the far left, it's the year 2002, and it goes down to 2012. And you'll see the original budgeted amount. That's what's budgeted. You'll see then what the actual amount was. The third column is the amount that was added as a result of what transpired during that year. And the fourth column is the IGT, or intergovernment transfer. The IGT started after they took away the upper payment. Well, I'm sorry. I'm getting excited about Medicaid here, and I was going to bore you again. There was a lawsuit over something bad that New York State was doing with money that we got for the nursing home. As a result of that, these IGTs were created and started coming to us back around 2008. If you look at this, and if you look at the actual amount that was subsidized in that last 11 years, as you go through that cycle, it's roughly $150 million. And you can see the added amount of about $35 million is over and above what was originally budgeted. So to give you a perfect example, in, let's say, 2009, they budgeted $4.5 million of support. The actual support was $10.5 million, and that was, and then there was the IGT support. The IGT, or the intergovernmental transfer, is complicated. What used to happen prior to 2008 is that the federal government sent us money, nursing homes owned by governments, and allowed us to keep that money, and it was for the nursing homes. And as you remember, we did an audit in 2001, released as a preliminary report in 2002 because the county executive would not cooperate or meet to discuss the exit at that time. And we clearly showed that money had been taken out of the nursing home and used in the general fund budget. Now, we were not alone in that. Other states did the same thing. And as a result of that, there were a series of hearings that were held in 2005 and 2006. And quite frankly, because of alphabetical order, the #1 county that was discussed about abusing this particular extra funding of Medicaid was Albany County. And that came as a result of our audit in 2002. So this IGT money comes with handcuffs. So when you look at the $30,600,000, that is additional revenues that went into the nursing home from the federal government. To get that, we have to pay them 50% of that out of our Medicaid funds. So literally out of the DSS budget, out of Medicaid, we would send them, $3.9 million last year, and they'd send us $7.8 million back. And that's how that works. A little complicated, but that's how it works. But you can see the trend, and the actual trend in the operation, is, as you can see, is actually improved. Can you go to the next chart, please? You can't read that. That's why we printed this out to give you this. We're trying not to kill a lot of trees. All of this information is available electronically, and after I'm through with the presentation, I'll take any questions that you have. This chart is New York Skilled Nursing Facility transaction activities prepared by a firm that it's Marcus and Millichap Real Estate Investment Services of New York City. They actually provide services to people selling nursing homes, and these are 16 nursing homes either for sale, under contract, or sold in New York State. The column I'll address you to is the price. Every one of those 16 facilities is getting a payment for the sale of that facility. The only example that I can find in the entire state of New York for the sale of a nursing home where you're actually paying the operator to take your facility over is Albany County. So I think that this is something that is a tool that will be useful for you. You can go through this and you'll see how many are union and non-union. You'll see how many are represented by this M&M group, not many of them or half of them maybe. You'll see whether it's government or private owned. The vast majority of these are government. One of them is a not-for-profit. So you get a feel as to what the value is for those nursing home facilities. What I'm going to do is just walk through, a synopsis of some things that have happened at the nursing home in the last year. And in the support, we talked about the net contribution being roughly $6.8 million after the intergovernmental transfer because of the IGT and the 50% match we talked about. And what you're looking at is you're looking at an improvement of position. A real shorthand way, you might have $10 million involved in the facility last year. What's the next chart? Yeah, all right. The comments that I'm going to read from a little bit will be available from our webpage tomorrow, and you'll have that. And the contributions that are made between 2010 and 2012 are significant. At the risk of getting everybody angry, I'll read the speech, and then I'll run. There's no winners in the current debate over the Albany County nursing home, not the county executive, not the legislature, not our residents, not the hundreds of residents we have shipped out of state and thousands we have shipped out of the county, not our employees at the nursing home facility, not the county employees that are affected by this support, and certainly not the taxpayers. The only parties that have a chance to win in this transaction is the state of New York, who is routinely underfunded governmental services across the board, and particularly in nursing homes, and then also some of the favored vendors who are going to be operating these facilities. And in our own example, I talk about that in a little bit down. We had to foil information from the New York State Department of Health because we couldn't get it from our own county government, couldn't get it from the Department of Health, and if it wasn't for Bob Friedman, we would have never gotten the information. We proved that in 1 year, New York State sent 6,000 people out of state, 107 of whom were Albany County residents, sent out of state. We pay additional funds for those people in other states. I think it's a travesty, and nobody knew about it, nobody cared, and it goes on. Now, thankfully, they're talking about repatriating some of those people, but our own nursing facility that gave up 350 bed licenses could have prevented literally almost 1,000 people in that 10-year span of time from having been shipped out of state. With our own example, and as we talk about this stuff, it's $1 billion almost of New York State money going to other states. In our own case, we have a private operator from Rockland County that's proposed, who had one facility a year ago and is going to have almost a dozen within 2 years. It makes me nervous. The issue of what to do with the nursing home has been a verbal can, a proverbial can. It's the can that we've kicked down the road for at least 12 years. And since our preliminary report of examination on the audit of the Albany County nursing home delivered February 20th in 2002. We started that in July of 2001. And I excerpted a section of that I'll just read a little of it, but it's pretty interesting. This is 11 years ago. Based on the audit work performed, we conclude that the county lacks the commitment and oversight necessary to assure that the facilities carry out their mission. And then we go on and go on through that and list all of the things that weren't being done. That was as a result of immediate jeopardy that we actually helped turn into the Department of Health when we had a resident go downstairs and die because there was not a facility, there's not a lock at the door or an alarm at the door. You as a group passed money for that budget year to buy those kinds of locks. There are letters on the record from April, May, June, July, August, and September from the director of the nursing home, Ms. Brown, to the deputy county executive at that time, Chris Andrucci, asking for the money to go buy those alarms that you folks budgeted. They did not buy the alarms. That person died as a result of that, and the county's response was to fire Ms. Brown, who had asked for those safeguards to be put in. Since the time of that audit, 2 additional immediate jeopardies have occurred. Most of the observations in 2002 still are present today at the facility. The executive readily admits, as does most of the legislative leadership, that nothing is done while the previous administration neglected the nursing home in an attempt to close this desperately needed source of care. Why the present administration got away with that is beyond me, but it speaks volumes about the failure of the legislature to act. Dan McCoy, to his credit, admits he was part of that group that did nothing while people were shipped out of state and out of county under his watch as a legislator, chairman of the party, and then chairman of the legislature. Again, to his credit, Dan's trying to move the issue and by following the recommendation of his transition committee. I believe, personally, that the transition report recommendation to get out of the nursing home business benefited the recommender and not Albany County. If you look at St. Peter's Healthcare Group under the new market we have, they have 6 nursing homes. They benefit if we close our facility. Now, under the County Executive McCoy's leadership, the issue's been effectively joined, and you folks are focused like I haven't seen in years. And a lot of people say to you, oh, this is bad when you clash and you fight and you argue. I think it's wonderful to see you committed. This is a critically important issue that has moral implications for all of us. And the fact that you folks are involved and Danny is involved is great. You have to have conflict to get clarity. Clarity will get a better outcome and a better result. Legislators Morris, Camiso, Kotrafeld, Mackey, Demolowitz have been joined by several other legislators in crafting an alternative proposal about what to do with the nursing home. And simply put, in our words, the county executive wants to privatize the facility with a lease agreement with the United Services Group with a 20-year lease that gives USG control of our property and virtual ownership of our license to operate as an Article 28 residential health care facility. Previously, as this came out and rolled out last fall, the claim was we're going to save $100 million over a period of time by paying USG an upfront fee and loaning them approximately $16 million at a low interest rate. To his credit, the county executive has worked with the legislature to modify that lease arrangement to remove the loan, which, by the way, Mike Mackey, wherever you are, thank you, because I would not have gone to Wall Street to ask to borrow money at a higher rate than we're going to loan it to someone else. And I have real questions as to the legality of that. But McCoy, to his credit, modified the lease. And you now have an upfront payment over the next 3 years of roughly, I think, $8.9 million to USG over that period. The legislature's proposal to retain a private management group to run the facility in an effort to rehabilitate the facility with union support claims to reduce costs significantly while maintaining control of the facility. Heated communications between the executive and the legislature, and more on the executive's part than the legislature's part, has taken part, although there have been exceptions among the legislature. And passion's a good thing, but we need to have some rational, calm decisions on what we're going to do. But, I'm stealing this quote because it's a great quote, but the wisdom of Solomon is called at this point in time. And you all remember the story of Solomon. A woman comes up and says, this is my baby. Another woman says, no, that's my baby, and there's an argument. And Solomon, who was king at the time, says, good, give me the baby. Give me a sword. Solomon takes the sword. He's going to split the baby in half. The real mother yells out, no, don't do that. Let the other woman have the baby, because she's worried about the baby. You are at that crossroads today with the county nursing home, in my opinion. If you look at the prices listed that we showed you on the chart for the facilities, you'll notice all 16 are getting paid for their facility. Some of the numbers are in the range that I suggested at an original meeting last year with the county executive, and was told by the county executive staff, oh no, you can't sell a nursing home facility. You'll never get paid for that. Pretty interesting, the other 16 are. I believe it's extremely unusual for us to pay someone for the privilege to give them control of our facility and operate that facility, while every other transaction in the state that we can find is the exact reverse. We sell it, we get money back, the operator operates the facility. Given my concern about Albany County's history of buying high and selling low, and I won't mention the family court building, the proposed lease takes this to an even worse level. We'll actually lock the facility up for 20 years with a lease and pay someone to take over the lease without receiving any return on our investment. Granted, you won't continue with the run-up in the numbers, but I don't think that you will under either proposal. I would ask that you consider the legislative option, but with a couple of changes to that. It's like anything else, nothing is ever simple. I think the legislature's option is a good and worthy option that should be looked at. I would suggest if the difficulty is between USG and some other group, you have competition for who's going to do it. If you look at some of the emails that were flying around last week, in one of the charts, it shows that the mission is the same under both venues. It shows that you have union representation under both venues. It shows that you have private professional management of the nursing home under both venues, both proposals. You know, then after that you get into, well, this is illegal, that's illegal. Well, you know, I'm not an attorney, but I know that if you hire an attorney or the right attorney and you pose the question differently, you're going to get a different answer. And I do find it interesting, though, how quickly we got a response from DOH. The modification I'd ask you to consider is to utilize the experience of other counties that have gone through this process and consider the formation of a local development corporation. I know Sean Morris has talked about it and a lot of other people as well several years ago, but have someone own the facility, the licensure, and the lands. Secondly, whatever management agreement you can agree to with the county executive over the next couple of weeks, or as the process evolves, you want to have someone run the home that the present administration ran into the ground, and work to correct these problems. If you do not have support of the union employees and everybody else to work together, and you cannot turn this facility around, I would recommend that you sell the facility. We have already demonstrated and proven as a group we don't want to run it, we can't run it, and we've done a shameful job of running it. And you know, it kills me to say this because it's a huge step away, but watching where you folks are, you know, going into the respective corners or bunkers, I am very concerned as to what's going to happen to the legislature. And one of the issues that I've talked to Frank about, to Sean Morris, and to several legislators, and to Danny McCoy ad nauseum, if you do not transfer the money in the June meeting in a timely fashion to have money there available to pay payroll in July, I will not certify payroll at the nursing home if you do not provide funding. So if everybody wants to keep playing financial chicken, I want you to realize that that's not going to happen after June 30th. So you folks have got to get together and come to a conclusion about what you're going to do. I personally think, this is just my opinion, but I personally think that if you can get this thing run well with a support level of between $5 and $7 million, which I think you can do, I think that's an acceptable level of support. You have to make that decision. That's your decision. We just tell you what happened and why it happened. The potential sale of that property, should we be forced to do that, and the adjoining lands could become a spur to the creation of a healthcare campus with related development that could actually reduce the subsidy significantly while improving care to the medically frail and elderly. I want to remind all of the public that are here and the press that It took Danny McCoy and Sean Morris and Frank Camisso and Mike Mackey and Gary Demolowitz and dozens others, a lot of courage and a lot of faith to step forward and to really force this thing to an issue. And I think there's an awful lot of risk for them politically to step out and do this. And I think that they're to be congratulated for doing that. This is a tough issue for everybody. But it's a very important issue, and it really tells us what we're going to do about ourselves and what we think. I think passion's a great thing, and we all know I'm a little bit emotional myself, but you have to let rationality enter into this, and you have to decide what's best for Albany County. The fighting the last few months has brought us to a financial game of chicken that benefits no one. Finally, I did mention, so you all have this clearly, you have money locked up to run the nursing home in your budget. Your budget passed money to run the nursing home for 12 months. Holding it in sequester, having it out in a contingent fund is a good political method of passing the budget, but it is not a responsible way to deal with the employees or the residents of that nursing home, and you need to transfer that money. And I know there's been all kinds of rumors and threats that could be vetoed, but I'm sure that if you sit down with the executive, and we're more than willing to sit down with you, that you folks can all come to a good agreement that'll work for everybody else. The only remedy I'm going to talk about today is a study that I talked to Dr. Gerald Benjamin about. And if you remember, I've talked about what the overall payroll is. If you could go to the next, the personnel charts. Were they in the back? How are we doing for time?
You're already over half hour.
I am over half hour?
The message is good, though.
Okay.
Keep going.
There's three charts. One of the things that if you look at this, if you take a look at the county the number of employees that the county had in the county employees chart. Nope. There we go. 2004, you were just under 3,000. You crossed 3,000 in 2006, I believe it was. You again in 2008. From 2008 onward, you've come down to roughly 2,400 and some odd in 2013, county employees. So for all the people out there complaining about government and that we're not doing enough to cut services, that we're not, tightening our belt enough, that may be true someplace else, but in body count at the county, that's not true. Could you show me the next chart, please? Nope. Nope. Go back. No, this is the chart on the. This is the chart on the personal services. $165 million this year. Okay. Nope. Nope. There it is. 1999, 2003, 2007, 2012. The light blue or whatever it is personal services. That's your .1 payroll. Health insurance is the yellow portion. The retirement benefit is this portion. When we went back to do this and look at 1999, someone asked in the office, why isn't that in the state of the Fisc? There was a year right around there, I think it's 97 or 98. Our retirement cost was, I believe, was it 300 or 400? It was less than $500,000 for retirement. When you look at retirement last year, roughly $14.5 million, that does not include the $9 million you're borrowing that you're going to pay over the next number of years to amortize that on. So, if you look at that period of time, you've gone from roughly a total cost of about $110, $112 million to about $164 million. That's a big increase in any book. That's happening at the same time that you reduce significantly the number of people working for the county. Clearly a problem. It's something we got to look at. We did a study that you folks were subjected to about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. We showed that payroll was $280 million for the 20 local governments, and benefits were $140 million. Well, it's well in excess of that. 10 towns, 6 villages, 3 cities, 1 county. You're looking at north of $500,000 for that, $500 million for those personal services. It is my belief that the thing you need to do is look at how do you attrit the workforce down reasonably, logically, while working together. And Dr. Benjamin's group from New Paltz, you know, I don't want to misquote the name of the company, but it's a group. It's a regional study group out of New Paltz. And Benjamin's group basically has done a lot of studies on consolidations of jails and other county services in the Mid-Hudson area. So we sat down with them and said, look, you know, we'd like to look at this. What would it take for us to be able to reduce payrolls by all 20 governments by $30 million net at the end of 5 years? That's including steps and raises, et cetera. And the first step to do that is a position control study. It's a very complicated document. We'll send that to you. His price for that was about $118,000. I talked to Danny, Nishawn, and several legislators about that in the fall, and people didn't think it was timely and couldn't happen quickly enough, but I think we all know that things take more time than you think. If we really want to work with the local governments on reducing the body count, I think it's something we should look at. And I think if you think of just these two charts, you can see that we're in an unsustainable position. And I would say to you that the county is, you know, down cutting bone and flesh now, you know, more and muscle more than it is fat. So I think it's something that we all need to look at. And there's a way to work with people. I would caution you, though, that if you want to work with 10 towns, 6 villages, and 3 cities, not going to go so well if you tell them you're going to take away their sales tax revenue, or you threaten you're going to charge them for the college chargeback money. So I think we've got to really work together to do that. We have a mechanism to pay for that through the savings that we've actually put together, and you know, in the final report you'll see tomorrow, you know, we talk about I think it's $4.1 million that we saved last year on refinancing our debt. These charts that we'll go through, I think, are illustrative. If you go back to the results, you'll see that on revenues. Go ahead. On results, here we go. You'll see that this is too complicated to get into right now, but your undesignated fund balance is going up. It's still too low. It's still only 6.6% of the budget. You know, our target was 10%. As a percentage of appropriations, it has gone up from last year. Your revenue is up from last year by roughly $8 million. You'll see why in a minute. Your expenditures are also up, but your expenditures did not exceed your revenue. That's a good thing. That hasn't happened a lot in the last 10 years. The excess is $1.2 million, and the total fund balance is $37 million, so you increase your fund balance. On the revenue side, the sales tax is up $8.7 million between all of us. Our share is $5.2. So you're all aware of this. Sales tax in 2012 went up by 3.78%. Pretty good year. I would caution you that you're going to have a lot to do to go up by 7% this year. If you go through these other things, tobacco settlement, a lot of these other interest income, these are pretty obvious to you. OTD's down a little bit. Civic Center is up because of, you know, a lot of good things that have happened there. The occupancy tax is up. If you go to the next chart, please. Tax items are up, and the tax items would include property taxes. I think your property tax went up by, I don't know, was it $7 million or something like that, roughly speaking. But you have other tax items that are received in that item. Your real government, your internal governments and state. By the way, look at this. State aid. If you go back to state aid in 1995, it's right around the same amount on a $289 million budget. You're at a $579 million budget, and they're only giving you $59 million. As you can see, federal aid is down. That is really down because we lost the FMAP money. The money we got that was part of the stimulus. Remember, we get that extra chunk of money? Well, that's gone. These are the transfers. These are the expenditures. You can see you're actually down in payroll. Even with all the raises, all the steps, and everything else, you're actually down in payroll by $1.5 million. Medicaid is up $2 million, but the real net of that is net of the FMAP is $6.7 million. Because we don't get the FMAP this year, we don't have that stimulus money. That would be the chin. Family assistance is actually down $2.5 million. Safety net's down 1.6. The jail's down 1.9. And not the picture from million more at the jail than we bring in, and nobody complains about that. Retirement, look at this retirement amount of $14 million. And that's up by 700,000. That's, by the way, that is what it is, but you have deferred payment on a significant portion of that you're going to be paying over several years. Health insurance is up $4.1 million. The transfer to residential facility is actually down this year. Next page. General government's up a couple $1 million. Education's down. Public safety's down. These, by the way, these are the 8 general organizational things. You'll see that one-page starting budget. And this shows you what the actual results are as opposed to what is proposed in the budget. And that's basically it. One next page, I think. That's it. The next one, the cash balances, and you can see the cash balances are significant. Those are general fund cash balances. So the county is, it's not on life support, but we're certainly not healthy by any means. And I would suggest that as you move forward, that you look seriously at putting competition together as to who's best to run the nursing home, because clearly we have proven that we are unable, unwilling, and uncommitted about running the nursing home. So we need to get somebody who is and have them run it. I think if you get together, if your leadership gets together with the executive, I think that you can come to some kind of a reasonable conclusion where the county can move forward. While you're having the intramural rivalry fights going on in this, please make a transfer in June to put the money in to meet payroll in July. You want to do it every month, you can do it every month. Now, some of our peer counties that are selling nursing homes. Ulster County is a peer county we deal with, and they have a brand new charter. It took them 2.5 years from start to finish to sell their nursing home. They had it in their 2011, 2012, and 2013 budget. They're selling it in July, knock on wood for them, of this year. Peer county of ours. They're getting paid for their facility. It's on the list. If you look at Onondaga, who's a much larger county, but a peer county to ours charter-wise, in form of governance, they're selling theirs, and they're selling theirs to USG, who's actually paying them for their facility. And I would say to you that any objective measurement used by CMS, our nursing home is better rated than the Onondaga's is. So, I think that's something you should look at. I'm more than willing to take any questions you have. I apologize for going long. Yes, Doug.
Yeah, the nursing home is down to 219 beds. Now, it's been down that low for a long time, below the 250. Do you have any estimate on the revenue loss, and what would you say about on the side about the sale of the Ann Lee home, the big vacant building that we have on the Ann Lee property, which is the biggest vacant building in the county, abandoned building in the county?
All right, I can break it into 2 parts. Our nursing home is licensed for 250 beds. Rensselaer County's is, I think, licensed for 362 beds. Saratoga's, whatever their number is, 250 or whatever. Columbia counties and Skankey counties. Every one of those adjoining counties are full up in their nursing home. If you just say, let's just say that the average is 220 at the nursing home, that's 30 beds you haven't filled. That's 12% of the revenue you could have at that nursing home that you're not getting. Number one. Number two, the sale of the Ann Lee home, or what goes on with that, I think you're going to be careful selling assets to do operating budgets. You need to control the operating budget. And I'll tell you, unasked, but one of the problems at our nursing home is that revenue problem we're talking about, and also the expense problem. I used to fix broken sewers for a living. A lot of people say it's the last time I had a job as qualified. But fixing broken sewers, sometimes you'll learn some pretty good lessons about how things get done. And some tasks are, when you're digging to fix a pipe, it's easier to stick a laborer in the hole 18 feet down than just use expensive equipment. That doesn't mean there's any difference in value of the labor, it's just a value of the job. When you have a job that we value at $19,800 to $21,000, that's a job that we value, and the accompanying benefits for that job are $25,000, that is gonna put your cost out of line, and something has to be done, something has to give, you can't do that. The third piece of the problem financially at the nursing home is, every other nursing home that you look at does not use, particularly the privates, does not use per diem nurses, they hire nurses. We haven't done that. And because of our people with behavioral issues, Alzheimer's and other issues, of which I'm quite familiar, being early on that track, the fact is that the more changeover there is in personnel, the more difficult it is to handle and deal with the people in the facility. So don't think that you're going to be able to sell your way out of this problem at the nursing home. Because if, let's just say that you sold the facility, you got a chunk of dollars that you apply to that. Well, there's a legislator that passed a resolution a long time ago that when you sell an asset, there's only 3 things you can do with that money. You can reduce debt service, you can replace another asset, or you can repair assets. You cannot use the proceeds to operate the facility. And that's a resolution that passed almost unanimously here in 1993, 4 or 5, something like that, Frank, but you would remember the year better than I would. Other questions?
Mr. Ether's next.
Sorry, Mr. Ethier.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Mike, I don't know if you can answer this question, but it seems that what the county executive has presented to the public, and the vast majority of, I don't mean the people at the nursing home working under us people, the vast majority of taxpayers, he's saying that the lease agreement that keeps the nursing home open, employees will have their job. But the thing I'm having a problem with, I can't seem to get an answer, maybe you can answer. Are we losing $1 million a month, the way it's being run now?
Well, one of the advantages of my job is I'm a financial umpire. I call the ball or strike after the ball has hit the catcher's mitt, so I have the benefit of saying, your actual cost of subsidy last year was less than $1 million a month when you figure in your obligation through Medicaid to match 50% of the IGT money. Now, that's considering you had 12% of the revenue not booked because you didn't fill the beds, and because you've got higher expenses than you should have. So yeah, you can run costs of $1 million, but the elimination of the facility does not guarantee that you will save $1 million. And I also think that we can do a better job running that facility, or another group should be running it, would do it for much less than $1 million loss per month. But Dan's calculation of January, February, March, and April would be correct from his point of view, but that doesn't include any of the IGT money, which we'll receive later in the year and in early parts of the next year, that's part of the revenue for that 12 months. So, you know, right now, the thing is hemorrhaging, but it shouldn't be.
So if not $1 million, what would you think we might be losing?
Well, I think last year, you're probably talking about $700,000 to $800,000 a month.
So it'd be safe to say from $500,000 to $1 million, there's a possibility one way or the other.
You wouldn't be saving $500,000 to $1 million. That's what you're losing that. Now, that's what the cost of subsidizing. By the way, how much do you make on running DPW? Can anybody tell me? Right. How much is DPW's budget? How much do you make on mental health? How much do you make in the health department? How about DSS? Anybody that tells you that government is a business is sadly mistaken. I came from the private sector. I worked there for 25 years. Government is not a business. And believe me, you know, you want to be careful about saying you want to be run like a business, because what if we ran this thing like Enron? So let's think about it. What you do is incredibly important. I give you all the credit in the world, because this is a tough issue you're wrestling with. You know, some of you are in more trouble on this issue than others because of the political calendar. But the reality is, this is a tough issue. I think there is a middle ground that will get us the result we all want. We want better care for our people in the facility. We want to minimize what our contribution is going to be. And quite frankly, we want to have a better outcome for the people we're taking care of there. And I think that we can do that. But I don't think being on, you know, I don't think people saying, oh, I'm in it to the end, or, you know, all this hunkering down, I don't think that works.
And I agree with you. In all the years I've been here, this tough decision I believe we ever had to make. But all that being said, then in your opinion, we should be out of the business, which I tend to agree with that.
No, that's not what I said. Let me be very careful. What I said, we all know where I am on the nursing home. If I had control of the if the nursing home was transferred to the Department of Water Control, you wouldn't lose the kind of money you've lost. You'd have a top-flight nursing home, and you would have nothing to worry about. The charter doesn't allow that. The charter has the county facility being run by the executive and overseen by the legislature. What I said is, based on the history and based on where you're going right now, that you're paying financial chicken with payroll in July, 5 weeks, 6 weeks away, I don't think the county's demonstrated that they can do a good job at the nursing home, because they haven't. I think the staff out there is killing themselves. But if they don't have the leadership, if they don't have the tools, if they don't have the technology, they can't do the job. I said that in 2002. It's true today in 2013.
I tend to agree with you, but on the other side, you're saying that if you had your choice, the lease agreement is okay, but renting for management would be a better way of going.
If I was sitting in that chair, I would vote for the management agreement.
You forgot to tell everybody when you sat in that chair, you're a little off the reservation.
I was a little independent, some people might say. By the way, the happiest person in the world that I got elected as comptroller was Frank Camiso. But you know, I think we should have run the thing right, but we haven't. And the record proves we haven't.
That's
so
agreeable.
If you can't work out an agreement with your unions to get this thing done and get it back on track, God save me and God forgive me for saying this, but if you can't do this, you should sell the facility to somebody who's going to run it the right way. But don't give the bed licenses away, and don't pay somebody to take over your asset. You all remember about the $8 million assessed property going for $24 million. We got to stop that kind of stuff.
And you're saying the same thing I've been saying all along. Our leadership, second floor, unions, workers, all get together in the same room, the leaderships, and come up with an answer.
That's correct.
Somebody has to give along the way. If that's not
Everybody has to give along the way.
Everybody has to give something.
That's correct.
And I find so far that's not being done.
Because right now what we're doing is we're shipping 100 people a year out of state. So we're saying, and I'll use the woman's name because she's a real person that we helped on this. We want Mrs. Crisafulli to drive, who's 83 years old. We want her to drive to Springfield to see her son. That's wrong.
Sir?
That is absolutely different. And by the way, financially, you pay the additional charge for us to send them to another state. Not just the 10%, but the overcharge to send them to a higher rate, to put them in a lower rated facility. And we've been doing it for years, and you've heard me complain about this for 13 years.
All right, thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Connors, your chart shows a very robust transaction activity for New York skilled nursing facilities. If I'm not mistaken, one of the RFPs that went out, there was two that went out. One was for management and one was for the sale. And we received no, as far as I understand, we received no interest in purchasing the nursing home. Do you have an explanation?
You know, this reminds me of the English Parliament. You know, and now I get a chance to pound the poor county executive, and I don't feel that that's fair to do. I will say this: the other counties who have dealt with this kind of a problem have gone out, gotten the property appraised, hired experts to do this, and done it. One of the groups that we talked to about a week ago was an attorney who actually did Onondaga County with USG. So I think that you could, by the way, to answer your question with another question, the Irish way of answering your question, Mr. Minnick, we put an RFP in to build a new nursing home. On the capital page for the capital contribution, it clearly states we were limited to $55 million on that page of the CON application. We put in $72 million. Can you tell me why the legislature authorized and allowed that to go through? And no, we can't, because you didn't know about it. Number one. Number two, during the same year, the CON is going through the process and we're getting beat up on it. Schenectady County puts one in for $40 million. You know, and again, by the way, this is during the same year that we paid $24 million for an $8 million facility. So I think the answer is pretty obvious to everybody.
Just a comment or question. If you remember, Mike, about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe even more, I put in a suggestion to look for federal funding to turn Ann Lee into affordable housing, so that individuals who live there could end up at Albany County Nursing Home, and nothing went anywhere.
I remember that, and I would say to you, in all fairness, I mean, the previous county executive is a great person who I have tremendous admiration and respect for his public service and his military service. But whoever it was who was running the shop on the nursing home completely obliterated a great facility. Mike Hoblock, our Republican county executive, did a 10 times better job running the nursing home than Mike President. And the figures prove that out. Your proposal never got off of the desk you gave it to, and you remember that.
Yeah.
Mr. Nichols? Mike, thanks. I just want to point out that there were two RFPs went out last year. One was for a third-party management firm to manage the Albany County Nursing Home, to which we got one response. That was the Feldman proposal. And the second one was the right to operate and/or lease the Albany County Nursing Home, to which we had no response. There's never, in recent years, an RFP go out to sell the nursing home. I think a few years ago, before the current administration, there was a proposal that went out, an RFP. I think we had an appraisal done at the time. I don't know if it was ever done or not. But clearly, if we're going to sell something, we're going to need to do an appraisal. That has not happened with this facility. So I think part of my concern with this entire issue is that we did have 2 RFPs go out, and we had at least one responded to it, and that was never really looked at until very recently.
That comment is accurate, but I would ask everybody to consider Saratoga County, just to the north of us, Ulster County, one county below us, both looking at the facilities. Both of them said, gee, the best way to do this is to have the facility owned by an LDC. Let's get it appraised. Let's bring professionals in. Let's bring people to look at it. Now, I don't, you know, as well-intentioned as the RFPs were, remember, if you go back prior to the RFPs, the transition committee or transition team said, sell the nursing home. And one of the people, you know, proffering that as a great idea was running a corporation that was running 6 nursing homes. Of course they want us out of the business. You know, I think there's a better way to do this. I think the legislature and the executive can sit together and come up with a better result than we have now. And competition will get you a better outcome. And I think the stuff that your legislators have done are to be commended. And I think that you sit down with the exec and let's look at this thing. Let's move it forward. But forgetting that, you must transfer money that you have in your budget for payroll in July, or there will not be a payroll in July. No, in July. You must transfer it in June, or there'll be no July payroll. We made that very clear to everybody. So.
Mike, have you in your capacity ever seen any kind of financial statements for USG? It seems to me obvious if they bought the one in Onondaga County, somebody had to do an audit. You're not going to go to a bank and get a loan without presenting documentation to make that.
Well, one of the difficulties, you know, I will say this. I mean, I think that Danny's people have tried to get as much information out there. We're all struggling, you know, with too much information sometimes. But the LLCs that are buying and operating nursing homes are, as you know, by licensure requirement, so they cannot have interest in any other facility. So it's a separate LLC for that particular nursing home. Their financials will be dependent upon when they are actually in existence and actually have an operating year. The parent group has got the stuff, and the county executive thinks very highly of them. I don't see why you don't have some kind of runoff that if you guys like whatever the group is, and Danny likes that group, and you want to have somebody run it, you know, compete. See who can do it better. But whatever you do, you've got to be together. If you're sending one message from the legislature and a different message from the executive, the staff out there and the unions that represent them are confused. And I don't blame them a bit for being upset with what we're doing or not doing.
Mike, to go back to that payroll, you were talking about all employees, or you talking about nursing homes?
Nursing home employees.
Nursing.
Yeah.
Come
Because-
July,
yeah.
other employees will be paid, nursing homes do not hold.
Right, and there are exceptions. There are some lines at the nursing home that people have not occupied the line for the full 6 months, So there may be some exceptions, but let's not screw around with this. Let's do the grown-up thing. Let's make the transfer in June for the July. Let's not screw around with this thing.
I understand that, but the way you said all, I
No, not all.
It ain't
The
all.
nursing home,
That's what I thought.
the NH fund.
Mike, I don't disagree with you about the sale of the nursing home, all the list you have here. But I think what we're forgetting is that Danny did not go down that route because he wanted to protect the mission of the nursing home. If you sell it to the private sector, that mission is gone. So I think we need to throw that back into the discussion.
Well, I think that's why the legislature's proposal, Charlie, has talked about having the legislature control it. What I'm suggesting, and you know, I'll send you this electronically so you can look at it, is that you need to have, as I like to say, the sword of Damocles. You need to have some factor that's going to bring people to a conclusion. I'll use an analogy. Section 6 of the charter gives equal power to the executive and to the legislature as you go through the charter process. Both are empowered, which encourage negotiations. I think the same is true with, if you're going to talk about the legislature's proposal of, you know, eliminating these jobs or tasks, you know, whether you go to impact bargaining or not, I don't know, but everybody's got to be on the same floor with that. And the point is that if we say, however we want to do this, we get out there, hey, we're learning. The facility's still open, the county still has control of it, but you need to run it better. Somebody has to run it better because we're not doing our job.